Jaya, Jaya. Lord! Tago! Tago! Lord! Tama na, Lord! Lord!
Aye, Shepherd's Pie, greetings from the Philippines. Welcome back to the channel for a coffee and a chat. Well, as you can see, sadly, we have been hit by yet another earthquake, 2 in a week. And this one was even stronger than the last one. This was a truly massive one, 7.4 megahertz on the Richter scale. Now, hopefully, the death toll is not as serious as last week's earthquake, but the trouble is when you make these videos, it increases. When I did the last video less than a week ago, I said I believed 6 people had died, and within 24 hours, the death toll was up to 60 plus. However, hopefully, initial reports are that the death toll and the damage is not as bad as last week's earthquake. Hopefully that's the case. I may be proven to be wrong because it's still quite fresh. It only happened 5 hours ago. So it's scary stuff. It's terrifying stuff. As you saw at the start of the video, horrific experience for the people who were involved. Your heart goes out to them. I can't imagine how terrifying it must be in that situation. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because 2 reasons. As I said in the last video, the Philippines is a very dangerous place to live. In fact, the most dangerous place in the world to live when it comes to natural disasters. We get hit quite regularly here by earthquakes and typhoons and volcanoes and lots of things. If you don't believe me, there's the evidence. Highest dangerous place in the earth to live when it comes to natural disasters. Now, having said that, it is not something that particularly worries me. But if it is something that worries you, you may not want to come and live in the Philippines. Because I have always taken the view that if it's your time to go, it's your time to go. And today, thankfully, wasn't my time to go. And hopefully it wasn't the time for many people to go. Hopefully no one has died. I haven't seen anything about the death toll yet. But the point is, these things will catch you by surprise. And unfortunately, let's say the emergency precautions over here, the systems that are in place, I think it would be fair to say, based on my experiences, are totally inadequate. The example being this morning. This earthquake went off at, I believe it's about 10:30 in the morning. It might be wrong. I was completely oblivious to it. I was in bed. I had a late night last night, weren't out. I was working on my quizzes and I didn't get to bed till about 3, 4 o'clock. So I slept through it. I didn't realise that we'd actually had an earthquake until 12 o'clock this morning when Ellen told me. She hadn't felt it either. I don't know if anyone else felt it in Dumaguete. We didn't feel the last one, but a lot of people did. But the point was, when she told me about it, I had a little look online to see what had happened. And apparently the tsunami warning had now lapsed. I didn't even know there was a tsunami warning. You know, I didn't get a notification on my phone. I don't think anyone here did. You do get notifications on your phone from time to time, but it's generally about a volcano, which is, I don't know how far away it is from us. I think it's way up in the other side of the island. But you will, once or twice a week, get a warning that the volcano is doing certain things. I can't read it. It's in Filipino. So Ellen, I used to ask her in the early days, what is this about? She would say it's the earthquake, and, you know, nothing's ever happened. And touch wood, nothing ever will. But the point is, there was a severe tsunami warning, an alert on Negros, and we were oblivious to it. Now, you might not be able to see it behind the jungle over there, but we were only a couple of 100 metres away from the sea. So thankfully, it seems to have passed. The warning is no more. The alert stage has been downgraded. But if we had been hit by a tsunami, we would have both been blissfully asleep, and we may have been washed away. Thankfully, it didn't happen, but we would have got no warning. And if we died, we'd have been none the wiser. But that's not why I'm making this video, because it's very easy for me to say, if it's your time to go, it's your time to go. But realistically, I haven't looked in the statistics about this, but the chances are you're going to survive. But that doesn't mean you are going to be inconvenienced by the whole situation, because the reality is, if it's a big one, it might not get you in the earthquake, but the local infrastructure is going to be devastated. And as I say, I have, and I think rightly, very little faith in the emergency procedures, the effectiveness of the immediate first response teams and all the things that are going to come in place, which is why I'm making this video. Because the last video I made, it wasn't something I thought about really, but a subscriber to the channel messaged me afterwards, an army guy from the UK. I met him in Dumaguete a few months back. He's living over here now permanently, and he had been living in a tower block, an apartment block, whatever you want to call it, in Cebu City, and he had been evacuated. And he had been evacuated outside for 4 hours. Now, me personally, if I was living in a tower block, I think I would be more worried about earthquakes and things of that nature than I do living in a one-storey house. Because the reality is, they were outside for 4 hours, and then they were given the all clear to go back in. And you've got to wonder, what about the structural damage? Has it really been given a thorough once-over by an architect? That kind of thing would play on my mind, particularly if I was on the top floor, because you just don't know, do you? And it's got to be one of the worst places to be, I would imagine. I'm no expert on these things. If you are in an earthquake, would be a tower block. And the higher you are, I imagine the worse that must be. And even if you're on the bottom floor, if the whole thing comes down, you're going to be stuck under a lot of rubble. But hopefully that won't happen to you. But the point he was making, and the reason I'm making this video, I was going to make it anyway. I was going to do a bit more thought into it. But I thought, well, I'll do it now, because, you know, we've just been struck again. And it might help some people. And it's certainly something that I hadn't thought about. And I should have done, because it's common sense. And he basically said in the message to me, you need a grab bag. Because he had realised when he came out to the evacuation period outside, what if this had been serious? What if the whole infrastructure had gone down? What did he have on his person to facilitate not being able to go back into the building? To facilitate a potential period of days and weeks without power, without flights, without infrastructure, with lack of water, with lack of food, all those good things. Because I've come to realise in my short space of time, and it's been amplified by the 2 earthquakes we've had in the last week, but that is a very serious reality. It's not okay just to take the view, well, if I'm gone, I'm gone, because the likelihood, far more likely you're not going to be gone, but you're going to find yourself living in a environment close to Armageddon for an extended period of time. What happens if you get separated from your partner? What happens if you don't have any cash? What happens if you've only got cash cards, but the ATMs aren't working? What happens if you don't have any valid ID? If you don't have your passport? If you don't have your ACR card? What happens if you don't have those things? What happens if the whole place goes to shit, excuse my French, and you are stuck helpless, you are abandoned, you are left facing the elements and the goodwill of the Filipino people? And he suggested, rightly or wrongly, in his experience of living here, that the emergency services and all the facilities to help people would most likely be channeled to the Filipino locals. The expats would be pushed to the back of the queue. I'd like not to think that would happen. I really would like to think that wouldn't happen, but it might do. But the point is, even if it didn't, you might want to get out of Dodge. And how are you going to do that if you don't have photographic ID? How are you going to sustain yourself if you don't have cash? Because it's all very well having a card, but the systems may be down. So he suggested to me that it would be very good advice to have a grab bag ready, so that when you leave, if you have to evacuate, if something happens, you have to get the hell out of Dodge, you have a bag that you can immediately access, which has the things you need to tide you over for an extended period of hell, which is what it might be. And it got me thinking, it's damn good advice. It's advice I have heard in the past, but it's not something I thought about here. It's common sense, but I have not been employing common sense. And I think the trouble is, I come from a security background. I was in the military police and I run a security company for many, many years. So security is my thing. So the idea of having my essentials all in one place is not something that I have ever done or would ever do up until now. Because what I tend to do, I've always been a guy, I think about what happens if I get robbed. I think what happens if the apartment gets broken into. These are the things I think about. I look at it from a security perspective. So I have always had, I've mentioned it on the channel here, I always have two wallets. I have a wallet that I take out with me, which I have some of my debit credit cards in and some of my photographic ID. And I also have another wallet with some other debit cards in and some other photographic ID. So if I lose one, I can get the other. I understand the value of having money. You need to have cash here in case something happens. But the idea of keeping those things all together is not something that I have ever thought about doing before. I'm not going to go into my personal arrangements, but I keep things in different locations and different places that cover those scenarios. But that wouldn't necessarily be any good for me in terms of a grab bag. So I am rethinking that now. I think it's probably better to take the risk with a certain amount of money. Certainly the passport, etc., is essential advice. He was taking it a lot further than I probably will, in the sense that he was thinking about protein bars and torches and all those good things. But the point is, that's down something for you to chat about. It's something that would be great if you put it in the comments that we talked about, because it's how far you're going to take this grab bag thing. Some are going to take it further than others. The point is, how far you take it is up to you. Whether you're going to be a minimalist or whether you're going to go the whole hog, if you're going to have a water supply, if you're going to have bottled water, if you're going to have tin goods, if you're going to have glucose tablets, if you're going to have torches, if you're going to have spare batteries. Power to you, but the bag is going to get quite heavy. I would advise against having large sums of money and your credit cards or with your photographic ID and your passport. But the point is, I believe it is fantastic advice. I think the grab bag is definitely the way to go. As I say, how far you take it is down to you. But it's certainly something I'm going to do. I'm going to have some cash. I'm going to have at least one credit card. And I'm going to have some photographic ID. And whatever I think about in the next few days as being essential to evacuate with. And I strongly suggest that you do the same thing. because I can't see a negative against it apart from security aspects. But as long as you don't put all your eggs in one basket, then I think it's definitely the way to go. And anyone who knows, who watches this channel for a while, I am not one for giving advice unless I think it's good advice and I believe wholeheartedly in it. You know, and usually on the channel, I just talk about my own anecdotal experiences, what's happened to me, how I think about it. I always say, take it with a pinch of salt. What works for me might not work for you. But yeah, grab bag. I'm going to give it a bit of consideration over the few days. What kind of bag it's going to be? You know, is it going to be a backpack? Is it going to be a plastic bag that I pop in a backpack? But the point is, if like me, you've got all your essential things in different locations, that is not going to do you much good if you've only got a couple of moments to clear the house. It's not going to do you a lot of good if the part of your house or apartment where you keep it all in is covered in rubble, collapsed, and you can't get to it. And it really is a likelihood that these things could happen. You know, if Dumageddon got struck really badly, I would assume it's unlikely that the airports are going to be functioning. I presume it's going to be unlikely that the ports are going to get up and running straight away. And you may want to get out of here. And the reality is, if the power's down and the internet's down and all those things, your embassy is not going to be a lot of use to you. And even, let's be honest, I don't hear many good things from embassies over here. Even if the power structure is fantastic and all those other things, it's unlikely, in my experience living in Asia in the last 12 years, that your embassies are going to be much use to you. The few times I have had to use the British Embassy, you've had to go there. You know, they're not going to come to you. They're not going to send you a replacement passport. They're going to, I don't know what they're going to do. I haven't had to use them for that. But whenever I have engaged or communicated with them, it has always required going to them. And when you do go to them, it's always surprising, shall we say, disappointing, just what lack of assistance they can offer. But yeah, it will not be a pretty thing to be stuck here. Because even if the airlines are up and running, even if the ferry ports do open, cannot get on these things without valid photographic ID. You know, you need something to get out of the island. You may not want to get out of the country. You may want to get to your embassy. You're not going to be able to do that without photographic ID. So it's something to think about. It really is. And I would urge you to do so. As I say, I'm going to think about it. I may do a follow-up video when I've considered what should be in my grab bag. Bit wary of talking about things like that because you don't want people to know what's in your house and where they are and all that kind of thing. But so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But yeah, I don't know. It will be an interesting thought process, which is why it would be great if you pop it in the comments. You will give me food for thought. I mean, this guy's ex-army, so you know, I'm ex-security, so he's looking at it from an army point of view, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when he started talking about, you know, bottled water, batteries, tin goods, glucose tablets, all that kind of stuff, he might not mention the glucose tablets. I think someone else did. I just start thinking that's a bloody heavy bag. I'm thinking more of a change of clothes, some photographic ID. You know, I think it's unlikely that you're not going to be able to get drinks over here. But you might not. A couple of bottles of water might be okay, but, you know, I can't see a scenario where every bar and every place, you know, you might be drinking cans of Coke or whatever, but I don't know, you know. The point is, it's up to you. It's your grab bag. But, yeah, do it and be aware. The Philippines is a dangerous place if this kind of stuff scares you. I mean, if you are terrified of natural disasters, then you might not want to move to the Philippines. It is the most dangerous country in the world for natural disasters. And it has made me realise, I mean, I've been here for, I think, 5 earthquakes now. And as I said in the last video, when I was over in Siquijor, there'd been a big earthquake, hadn't felt it. I used to spend a lot of time, if you watch the channel, in a place called the Rum Bar, which was literally by the ocean. The water came up to the bar, you know. The whole of San Juan was within 20, 30 metres of the sea. The earthquake had happened at 2 o'clock in the morning. I had noticed as I was walking around, there had been a couple of signs put up in Filipino. I had no idea what they were about. I was sat in the bar in the afternoon having something to eat. Literally, the water was a metre away from where I was sitting and dining. And I said to one of the bar staff, what are those signs they put up? Because they'd started collecting them back in. And he said, they're tsunami warnings. There might be a tsunami. And you're thinking, if there had been a tsunami, you couldn't get any closer to the water. And I'd been to Palawan Beach that day. Palawan Beach was heaving, you know, so I would guess 86.9% of statistics are made up on the spot. So I'm going to make one up the spot now. I'd say 99% of the tourists on the beach had no idea there was a tsunami warning. You know, they had no idea. And today, I wake up to hear there was a tsunami warning. Thankfully, it didn't happen. Thankfully, the danger's passed. But we're less than 200 metres from the beach. I did a little Google when I heard that. How high do the waves have to be to hit us here? Not very far. Tsunami waves can go 4 kilometres inland. So, you know, you just don't know here. It's not something I'm going to lose sleep about, in the sense that, you know, you can't worry about these things because they are beyond your control. But that doesn't mean you can't prepare for them. I'm not a prepper by any means. I'm not a survivalist by any means. But I think it's damn good advice. And it's something I'm going to do. Anyway, food for thought. Grab bag. Good idea or not? If you're going to get a grab bag, what are you going to put in it? What would you carry? And remember, the definition of a grab bag is you can grab it and you can run. So weight's going to be a factor. Ease of access is going to be a factor. Anyway, I've said my piece. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you found the information useful. If you did, or the suggestion, shall we say, useful. If you did, smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed, it'd be fantastic if you did. Whether you do, whether you don't, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay safe. Be lucky.